I should just gush on you really quick first because no, I should just because you're actually a very huge deal in my life. And
Okay.
I might choke up.
Oh,
So like years ago, I was going through like it was such a dark, depressing time for too long. I was recommended your book, Careergasm, and and I swear to God, it's written exactly for my brain because of the fonts and the bigness and the yellow and and you swear and you're a fucking human being in your book, and no one's ever given these exercises before. So
yeah.
I'm a little over enthusiastic about it, but it's like the stuff about your like think back to all your jobs and the purposes, what made you feel good about those things, and the work through that book actually connected me to what I'm doing now. And
Mm.
it is there's even though there's still like that depression and there's that getting through this baseline malaise, I feel as though I at least have a purpose, and I cannot thank you enough for that. This is
Oh,
huge.
wow. Wow. That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that with me. Hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And so how did you get to where you got? I'm interested in that, like your journey. I saw
Oh,
in your bio that you were like on the track for a PhD.
yeah. So I was a business professor before this, and I was at the tail end of my PhD. I'd been teaching at a university for 2 years. And what I was teaching and studying was organizational behavior, which is workplace psychology. Worked very hard to get there. It was a lot of hoop jumping for that profession. Found I wasn't liking it. I really loved teaching. I loved my students, but I hated conducting research. And I don't know if you know, but a professor's job, like 80% of the job is research and only like a small 20% is teaching. And so it's interesting. When I was on that path and starting to realize I didn't like it, I did what most people do, which is to ignore it and push it down and try not to, and try not to have that feeling. And so I was able, air quotes, able to do that for about, a couple of years. But I have to say, during those 2 years, I had all sorts of shit go haywire in my life and in my health. I had unexplained hives. My back kept going out. I had all sorts of health, digestive issues. Like, it was like my body was like trying to like raise like the red flag everywhere. But because I had worked very hard to get on that path where I was going. I tried to push through. And, the further down that path I got and the sicker I got, I realized, okay, something's got to give. And, all of that turned into me taking the knowledge I have about work and workplace psychology and helping actual people with actual problems, people like you who read my book, who are, in a place where they know they need a change. And God, it feels so much better. That big transition happened almost exactly 10 years ago for me. And it happened because I had a breakdown in the middle of a crowded Starbucks. Like, I had one of those moments. You ever have one of those moments, Russ, where like, yeah, it's like time slows down and you're like watching it unfold
Oh
from
my
your
God.
own body. I swear to God, everybody's had a couple of moments like that in their life. I was sitting and I was working on some research as a part of my dissertation, and I think I just literally reached my limit. Like, I just literally couldn't do it anymore. I started crying. I was hyperventilating. I nearly spilled my latte all over my laptop.
Holy, in
Like,
Starbucks?
in Starbucks, like I
Holy
had a
shit.
full on public breakdown. And I went to my car, tried to recompose myself, thought I did, came back in, and then the breakdown commenced again, which is the part that I don't talk about in my book. It was like this long, cascading, embarrassing moment for me. And I knew exactly why it was happening. And I gave notice the next day. I couldn't do it anymore.
Did you know what you were gonna do? Because I
Yeah.
think from me in my cry moments, in my lowest of lows, it's that helplessness of like I don't know what it is, but it can't be this. Did you
Yeah.
know where you were going?
Yeah. Yes and no. So at first, the answer is no. I knew I wanted to do some sort of career coaching, but like that's a
Oh,
very broad world, right? So the
yeah.
truth is, when I first started, I built a business and I built a brand that felt bad. I built something that felt too broad. So here, imagine a website with me, this person whose book you read, who swears, who's a real human. I built a website with me in a white button-down shirt at a bookkeeping table, looking very corporate. And of course, I attracted the wrong kind of clients. And I was helping people with more of like the tactical strategic part of career change. So like, the resume, LinkedIn, all like the stuff that strategy coaches do. And after only 5 months of that, I decided to burn it to the ground because
Oh, wow.
I found out very fast just from trying it out that I didn't like working with super corporate people. I didn't like working only on the tactical stuff. So I was like, okay, I still want to work in this world, but I want to do it in a way that feels real. And I want to work with real human people. So that's when I came up with the idea for Careergasm, and actually helping people move towards work that feels good, hence the name Careergasm. But the kind of work that I started doing was helping people with that exact same thing that you were talking about, helping them around the question of, I know it's not this is not what I want, but I don't know what that next thing is. And that's what all of my work has been circled around for the past 10 years.
Oh my God. And it's phenomenal. You had mentioned that you had worked with people with ADHD.
Lots.
Do you find, what are the commonalities you get? Now I'm gonna, like, what are we like? What are the things? What are our problems?
Let me hold up the mirror for you in the career
what's my
world.
problem?
Yeah. You know what? I actually think and I think one of the reasons why a lot of folks with ADHD are kind of attracted to my kind of career coaching is because the approach I take is like, it's very nonlinear. It's very playful. It's very, it's almost like we're coming at the question of what do I want from a bunch of weird, kooky, different little angles. And so at least the folks with ADHD that I work with, they find that that's helpful for them because, when they're trying to navigate their career and like, even when they're trying to get help for their career, they keep bumping up against stuff that is very linear in fashion and very formulaic in fashion. And my experience, at least with the folks I've worked with, is that doesn't work well for people, not just for people with ADHD, but that generally doesn't work well for us as humans in general. So that's one thing I've noticed. I've noticed that a non-linear, playful approach is a lot better for folks with ADHD. The other cool thing about the folks that I work with who have ADHD is this hyper-focus thing that so many people have is actually a superpower when you find a career that you're actually aligned with. Because, I mean, I'm sure as you and all of your listeners know, you're the experts. When you have hyper-focus, you tend to hyper-focus only on things you actually care about.
Yeah.
So hyper-focus isn't something you can activate in a career that's feeling flat for you. It really only shows up when you've done the work to get the clarity you need to figure out like what is the thing you would love to just like rabbit hole on. And if you can make a career of that, kind of like what you're doing with this podcast, like how it's brought you to life, if you can make a career of that, just there's actually a natural flow. And so many people look at ADHD as something that has to be sort of like conquered or accommodated, but actually there are these sort of like superpowers that you can unlock if you have the right conditions.
I like that. I'm a hardcore advocate of not calling it a superpower just because of the fact that it's hurt me so much.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
the point to you, but I'm 100% locked in on the hyper focus as like so for ADHD Big Brother, I love helping adults who are struggling with ADHD and depression. The act or the art form of helping is beautiful to me. Marketing and business building and things like that are Achilles heels. They are levels of hell. It's dramatically awful. I get the idea that hyperfocus can get me to a career path. Mm-hmm. What's the advice on how do you build a career when all these things suck around it?
Yeah, the business stuff is a huge hurdle for most people. like literally anyone who's trying to build a business. I have had to climb that mountain myself. What I
How did you do it?
what I have found that is helpful for me and also the clients who I help build businesses is to focus on clarity before strategy. So maybe I'll unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they want to build a business or when they want to make a career change, it's almost like they're so desperate for the answers that they sort of run the risk of stepping outside of themselves and just doing what someone else tells them to do, like, oh, this is the formula I should use, or oh, this is the like person with the answers. And actually what I have found is if we just press pause on that that sort of panicky part, and instead, at least for the first half of the work I do with people, we focus on like getting really, really clear about like who their people are. Like if you had a lineup around the block of people who wanted to work with you, and you could only let a few of those people in, like what would be the characteristics of those people that you would most like to work with? And that's a very different headspace than most people work with, because most people work from like a very scrambly place of like a desperation of getting clients. But if you have that sort of red velvet rope policy around your business and the clarity of like, ooh, like, I really want to work with this group specifically. For me, it's career change. For you, it might be helping people who have ADHD. And if we spend a bit of time getting clear about who those people are and how to speak to them, how to speak to the specific problems they're having, all of a sudden, writing the content for your website, so easy, because you've already worked out the specific problems people have. You've already worked out who this is for and who it isn't. So there's something about doing the clarity work before you jump into the strategy that makes it less of an uphill battle, because you're just very clear about who this is for, who it's not, and the way you want to show up with your people. Very much in the same way that I had to grapple with that at the beginning of my business. Like I built something that felt bad, and the problem was, oh, I didn't make this for the right people. There's actually different people I want to be helping with different stuff, and that makes all the difference, I find.
These markers, it looks like you have markers as you're going where you can go, oh, this is not the right path for me, or this is the right path for me. What are your indicators or red flags, or are you consciously looking for those things while you're in business, or are they're insights that hit you and you go, oh, this is why this isn't working?
I think at the beginning of my business, it was something I had to feel out a little bit more. And I think that's true for most people, whether they're starting a new career path or starting a business. At the beginning, there's sort of a feeling it out phase you have to go through to either confirm or challenge the ideas you have about how something is going to work out, or the ideas you have about how something is going to feel. And that's an important phase.
I heard you talk about this before. Is this like what you're dabbling? You were talking about dabbling.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
talk about that? Because
Sure.
I go from zero to this is my new identity and this is my life now. And I've done that for, there was a time, as I'm going to bird walk, but there was a time that I made a mockumentary with some friends of mine about scrapbooking, and I played this crazy scrapbooking lady. And, it was a hit with the stamping community. And that got me all juiced up about designing clear polymer stamps. I created a fucking line of clear polymer stamps. And I was like, this is a great business. And it was the the wrongest thing for me. I did not dabble. I basically threw in because there was a spark. Can you speak to dabbling, and can you speak to how do you discern if this is just this is a brilliant idea that's a passing fancy maybe, or this is legit?
Yeah, yeah. And that second point you make is a good one. So I really believe in the power of dabbling as a strategic thing to do. Because what's not strategic is to completely jump ship, as you illustrate, into like a totally different area without checking your assumptions about what it's going to be like. So whether you're starting a business, whether you're making a career change, what I have my clients do is like, sure, at first we do the inner work to see what matters to them. We come up with what I call career ingredients, like the main things they want to bring forward in the next phase of their work. But then after we do that, I have them collect really great research by talking to other people who are doing similar types of work to see if, in fact, the thing you're leaning towards is actually going to be a good fit for you. And not just in terms of like the tasks you're doing, but also like the culture, the environment. You want to know what the hurdles are. You want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly before you move in any direction. And you want to ask those people about like the trajectory of their work. Now, the story you gave is so specific. You wouldn't have been able to find someone else who like designed those specific stamps, right? But you could have talked to other people who were in that world, had, developed products before, and maybe talk to them about like what it's like to launch a product, what it's like to like maintain a product and build a community and that sort of stuff.
I didn't do that.
So,
I found
yeah,
the people and I said, how do you get these made?
yeah.
I didn't ask, what are the implications of doing this and what am I getting myself into?
Yeah.
I wasn't actually looking for mentorship, right? I was just, how do I make a stamp? What's the company that does them?
Yeah.
And that actually speaks to that point. Yeah.
There was nothing wrong with that inclination you had. There's just a really important step there that had you sort of explored, you might have maybe thought about things in a more considered way, which is really important when you're making big life decisions about making a career change or starting a business.
What kind of advice then would you have for somebody who is an artist? I have a fair bit of people that they're just so beautifully creative. They make wonderful stuff. And it's not necessarily all art. It's like it could be they design furniture or they are interior designers. Or they're making a business around the art. Is that the same pathway as like we're in like service-based type stuff, right? Where we're like, I'm going to help people. They're selling a thing. How is that different? How is that approach different? Or
It is different in some ways, but here's the common thread that I think is really important. No matter what kind of business you're going to create, it is so important that you get really clear about who this is for. Sometimes when people make a thing, they're primarily interested in the thing they're making, and then who they sell it to is kind of an afterthought. That's a bit cart before the horse, actually. What most people who are successful in business find a way to do is find a way to, yes, I mean, obviously the thing you're making is so important, but also equally you want to care about who you're making it for and be really clear about who those people are for. Because if you're not clear about who those people are, you can't sell to them. You don't know who you're talking to. So you end up having sort of like a bland, vanilla, megaphone marketing strategy, and it doesn't work for anyone, whether it's a
oh,
product-based business or a service-based business.
oh, that's brilliant. That's really good. There's a quote in your book that's the universe does not offer exact GPS coordinates. You're not supposed to know exactly what the end looks like. This is really freaking hard for people like me to accept. Um, and can you give an example of what this could look like in a good way?
Yeah. First, I will say it is hard for people like me to accept too,
Okay,
because
good to know.
I am very much a planner. My inner control freak does not like knowing how things, if like if they're not specifically going to work out a certain way. And I think that's true for everybody's inner control freak, inner captain wanting to know that final destination. So here's what I mean by that and how we can look at that positively. That's just the way the world works, right? Like we can plan as best we can, but there's sort of a part of like you, me, and everyone listening who knows like there's only so much we can plan. And then there's also like a little bit of self-trust that we need to develop, a little bit of acting on faith that we need to develop in order to move in that direction. And so if you think, okay, like, yes, I can plan for something. Yes, I can do really good research. And that will still only take me about 80 or 90% of the way. With every person I work with, I always say, what's crazy is we're going to do all of this work. And at the end of the day, you're never going to be 100% sure that it's the right thing or 100% sure that it's going to take off, because there are so many things as humans that are out of our control. But if we go into our exploring knowing that, if we go into our decision making knowing that, it sort of softens the hypervigilance that we bring to our decision making, and it lets us sort of relax into the little action baby steps that we take, because we know it's just our job to do the work, do the research, take the action steps, and then there's a little bit that's out of our control. And the reason why that's empowering is it actually takes you out of paralysis and lets you start moving forward, because the fact that we can't control everything is something that keeps a lot of people in paralysis. It's like, I'm just going to think about this for 3 years before I actually do any little baby step about it, right? I have so many clients who are like, listen, it's been almost a decade and I still haven't done this fucking career change. So what that does, knowing that, you know, we can't control everything, but we can focus on the things we can control, that helps us step out of paralysis and into action. And boy, even with baby steps, that is a very powerful thing to start moving into action.
Oh yeah, and it speaks to fear as well, and dealing with the fact that some of the stuff is the fear of not being in control, letting go of that, or I guess not letting go of it, but accepting that it's there, and that it comes with the territory. This makes me want to talk about imposter syndrome. There's this sense that we're always trying to I don't know, academia our way into thinking we've earned a seat at a table, and like, oh, if I get and I'm currently getting a bachelor's degree in psychology at 47, and I'm like, at this point, I'm just doing it because I started it, and my kids are watching me, and so I'm like, look, you can do a thing. It's never too late. But I'm like, oh, I don't care about degrees, and I don't care about credentials, and I don't. This imposter syndrome is it something to work through? Is it something to get past? Can you speak to it a little bit?
Sure. Yeah.
Was that even a question? I don't even know
Sure
if
it
I
is.
gave
Yeah,
you a question.
it's for sure a question, and I have some thoughts, because imposter syndrome is something I talk a lot about with my clients,
Great.
because I am all day, every day, I'm helping people find the strength to try something new. It's literally what I'm doing all day, every day. So everyone I work with has imposter syndrome when they sort of get to that scary precipice. You asked, is it something to overcome imposter syndrome? I actually think imposter syndrome is something to acknowledge and just put your arm around. So, you know, I feel like, yeah, truly, like, I feel like we don't need imposter syndrome to go away, but there's something about acknowledging these tender feelings that we have, that, and just sort of embracing them as a part of the journey that lets us move forward. It's kind of like, instead of letting your imposter syndrome, you know, take the wheel and drive the bus, it's like you lovingly strap it in, you attach its seatbelt, you pat it on the head beside you, and then you're on the journey together. So like, you just kind of know it's going to be a passenger on the journey. And, you know, to speak a little bit more deeply about imposter syndrome, I think we have it when we are afraid that people are going to judge us. Like, that's really what the root of it is. So, for example, like, you know, in your case, if you're, you know, starting a business, or if someone is making a career change or starting a business, if you get too wrapped up on, I guess, meeting people's objections, and if you get too wrapped up in convincing people that you're credible and convincing people that you have something they need, you're probably actually speaking to the wrong people, because there's probably a subset of people that are like you, that don't care about the degrees, that don't care about the quote unquote paper trail and the hoops you've jumped through and all that. They care about what you have to offer because of your experience, your story, your energy. And, you know, it's interesting. I can use myself as an example. You know, I've got a wall of degrees back behind me here. Nobody cares about that shit. I've written for big publications like Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur. Sure, that like looks like credibility, but you know, the number one thing people tell me about when they first reach out to me is they're like, oh, your story really resonated with me. That story about you having a hard time with your career, that story about the Starbucks breakdown, or there's something about your energy that I just like. I actually think that's more of what connects us with people. Now, of course, you have to know what you're talking about, and you have to have like something solid that's actually helping people. But if you're focused too much on the folks who might have a problem with your quote unquote lack of credibility, that means you're probably ignoring the folks who are there for very different reasons and don't care about that stuff.
That's a great point. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And as I tuck my imposter syndrome into my seat next to me.
There you go.
All
Yeah.
right, now shut up. We're driving. No more talking, imposter syndrome. All right, we'll pull this car over right now. I have a question that is a boring question. It is the most boring question in the world, is the logistics of starting a business. Do you help people with you gotta go to the government office, you have to get a tax thing, and blah, 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 blah. Do you help people get through those hurdles? That's an ADHD nightmare. I know it's a nightmare for everybody, but
Yeah.
anything that has any amount of tension to it is easily either forgotten, pushed away, looks like I'm being lazy and procrastinating, but it is a physical impossibility half the time. Do you help people with that? Like, where do you start?
I actually don't help people with that part, and I'll tell you why. I work with people internationally around the world, and all of those processes are different. So I live in Toronto in Canada. You're in the US. I also have people in Europe and Australia and people I work with. So I'm not the best person for that. For my clients who I work with here in Canada, I actually just send them to a really great, super affordably priced service that tells them how to register their business, like how to do all that, like really intimidating paperworky stuff that you were talking about. So most countries will have some sort of business where you can pay like $100, $150 to like just have them guide you through it so that you're not breathing into a paper bag the whole time. I'm not sure what it is, right? Like, I'm not sure what it is in each country.
I think I know what it is for the US. I think you gotta, somebody told me this, a great guy that was one of my mentors a long time ago, is the Small Business Development Center is free business starting advice and workshops, whatever it is. There's one in the community college here in Pasadena. I think that would be the way to go.
Tactical.
Yeah. And then you have to use your ADHD tools to get started on the thing, which is a whole separate bag. Episodes 1 through 80 of the ADHD Big Brother podcast.
Yeah. The piece I mostly help with when we're doing business development is the like brand building, getting clear about who your people are, getting all of the copy for your website, developing your first offering. So I work with, for example, like with a lot of coaches and consultants and therapists and people who have service-based businesses to help them figure out like what that first offering is that they're going to make and how to talk to people about it in a way that actually gets them excited.
Okay, that's awesome. Can you talk about your things? I want to talk about the ways that you help people. That there's 3 ways that you do it.
Yeah. So there's 3 groups of people I help. The biggest group of people I help are aspiring career changers, people who have jobs that they would love to quit, but they don't know what they want. Most career coaches, I'm a little different. Most career coaches only help people with the strategic tactical stuff. So like resume, LinkedIn profile, like, job applications, and that's great for a lot of people, but there are so many people who are not even close to that stage yet because they don't even know what they want to do next. So that's the piece I help people with, is like helping people get clarity about what they want so that they can do a good job search. I always say, like, doing a job search without knowing what kind of job you're looking for is like looking for a needle in a haystack, but not even knowing what a needle looks like. Like, it's like truly impossible. It's very frustrating for people. So I'm more of like a clarity career coach. So that's my first group of people that I work with, is the career changers.
Can I ask you a question? Can you please share, this is the exercise that changed my entire life. So can you please share that with people? It was the I'm going to butcher it, but it's where you look back at all the jobs you've ever had and what did you love about them, or it was a specific exercise. Can you speak to that? Because that fits
Yeah.
right in with this.
Yeah. So that's one of the exercises from my program, Career Shift, which is my career change program. And that is basically, if you're at home, just, this is a very easy exercise to do, listeners. Just grab a piece of paper or open your phone and list all of the jobs you've ever had. Like even like the part-time jobs, the crappy job you had when you were a student, go back as far as you can remember. Now, what most people will naturally remember is the stuff you didn't like about your jobs. That's not what we're going to look at here, although that is important to look at. I do that in other exercises. In this exercise, I want you just to write down the things you actually enjoyed about each of those jobs. Even if it's something you only did, like it was only 1 or 2 or 5% of your job, even if it was a very little piece of your job, write it down. Now that's going to take you a while, but what you do when all of that is finished is you sort of stand back and you zoom out and you ask yourself, are there some common themes that I notice here? And you will see some common themes. This is hypothetical, but you might see something like, oh my God, like I really care about creating very like collegial friendships in my career. Or, oh, I really care about helping people, but in this specific way. Or, oh, I really care about creating things in this specific way. And so those are what I call career clues and career ingredients. And that's a really good place to start if you're thinking about a career change and you don't know what you want, because those are really good little compass points that'll not take you all the way there, but at least get you pointed in the right direction.
Oh, it was so brilliant. And the epiphanies, the epiphanizing that had on me. I remember I was a bellman at a hotel. So in this exercise, so I'm like, what the fuck is great about being? I loved helping people get their bags to their room. That was that's the dumbest fucking thing. But
Wild.
I loved the conversation that we would have. I
Yeah.
would, and it just was nice to help someone with a thing. And I'm like, okay, so service is basically helping people with a struggle, and I'm like, and all these things started to click for me. It was
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's interesting. You can get some really good career clues from places you don't expect.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I never would have thought I would get a career clue from uh, helping people with their luggage. There you go.
There you go.
So what are the other ones then? The other offerings that you have?
So the other two groups of people I work with are, what we've been talking about, helping people develop their own businesses. That is like a big, scary mountain for a lot of people. Like there's so many people out there who have like a really juicy, joyful idea tucked inside, and they just don't know how to make it happen. And I love being the person who helps them actually bring that to life. So that's the other group I work with. And then the last group I work with people who are just graduated out of school, people who are at the end of college or university, or in their early 20s, mid 20s, and feel super lost because they either don't want to work in the area that they studied, or something has changed about their interest. There are so many students who are sort of forced on a particular career path by a parent, or, even if they're not forced on a particular career path, but like their school asks them to choose a path when they're 17 years old and they're applying to college or university. And my God, we change so much in our teens and 20s that even if you were someone who chose something that felt really aligned at the age of 17, you might get out of school at 22 and feel super, super lost. So I help those folks find their way too.
God, you're an awesome human being. Thank you so much. I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much for all that you do. You're doing it for everybody. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Anything that we didn't cover?
um,
I'm trying to think myself.
you know, yeah, there's two things I'll just quickly share, Russ.
Right.
One is I just want to encourage people, like, you are allowed to bring your humanity to your career, despite what the world tells you. So if you believe that's not allowed, you will end up making choices that box you in. But if there's a part of you that knows that that's bullshit and that there are things you can do in your career that are actually going to bring you to life and leverage the natural gifts that you have, you will find a way to move in that direction. And I think very rarely the world reminds us that that is true. In fact, it usually tells us the opposite, that we have to sort of conform, find the place where we fit in, and just sort of like hunker down until we retire. And I think that's a really shitty way to go through life.
Yeah.
So I guess the big message there is like, you have a lot more freedom than you think you do. So be careful about who you listen to, because that will greatly influence your decisions. And then the last thing I'll say is, I have a free 3-day career course that people can take. It's called the Careergasm Crash Course. You can sign up for free at careergasm.com. And it's really fun way to do some of these exercises we're talking about. It's like a really fun way to explore your career desires if you feel lost.
That's okay. So then there you go. So I'll link it in the show notes, and it'll be out there. I'll put in the newsletter. You'll know about it. You guys will be hearing about it. I will scream it from the mountaintops because I'm a big Sarah Vermunt fan.
Oh, thanks, Russ.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
You're such a big deal in my life, and the fact that you came on the show is just wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. This is lovely.
You got it.